Welcome to Blue Bench Farm. This is my very first somatic movement video for the Calm workshop that I'm sharing with you, and I'm really excited to map a few areas of the body for the sake of bringing our nervous system to a calm state or to access the parasympathetic nervous system. So as I've kind of talked about in the previous slides, we can't think our way out of anxiety because our mind cannot access our subconscious part of our nervous system, which is the autonomic nervous system. But we can access this part of our body through movement. And so we are going to map 3 different areas today. One would be the acromion process, which is part of the shoulder girdle, which sits at the very top of the scapula. And you can reach that area if you kind of run your hand around the collarbone and keep following the collarbone up to the top of the shoulder blade. And there's this tiny little knobbly bit at the back of your shoulder girdle, and that would be your acromion process. So if you just kind of want to feel around that area a little bit and give your body a little bit of sensory information on where this body part sits, and bring your awareness to that area on this side. And then also repeat that on your opposite side, on your right hand side, which would be my mirror image. Yeah. Wonderful. So the next points I'm going to show you laying down. And so if you lay down on your mat and put your feet a little bit wider than the width of your hip bones, which is the next area we are going to map, which is your anterior superior iliac spine, the ASIS bones. And if you run your hands down your rib cage and find that little knobbly bit that's sticking out from your pelvis, those are your ASIS bones. And if you want to just kind of scratch around in that area a little bit and just give your brain a little bit more information on what it is that we are paying attention to. The third point that we are going to bring awareness to today is the foot valves. And the foot valves, as I mentioned in the slides, sit between the very end of the arch of your foot and your heel. And so if you lift your foot and you can just kind of scratch around a little bit in this area or tap in that area, give your brain a little bit more information on what it is that we are focusing on. So now choose either your right or your left hand side, whichever is more prominent in your awareness, that comes easier to you. For me, it would be the left-hand side. And just keep your awareness on your acromion or the top of your shoulder girdle for about a minute or so and see if anything changes. Does it feel closer drawn in towards your ears? Does it feel closer drawn in towards the spine? How is the back body of your shoulder girdle resting on the floor, whether you're focusing on your right or on your left-hand side? Does one side of your shoulder blade feel different than the other? Is there a difference between the two sides? Is one feel closer to the ground than the other? And as you're placing your awareness in that area, does anything change? Moving to your ASIS bone, so your little knobbly bit of your hip bone that's sticking out, your emotional center of your body. Does the ASIS feel like it's contracted closer towards midline, or does it feel like it's falling closer towards the ground? How's your pelvis resting on the floor? Does it feel like there are certain areas that are more prominent, that are pushing more against the floor than the others? And as you keep your awareness on your ASIS, does anything change? Is there any change in how your pelvic floor is feeling in regards to the contact with the ground? Do you feel any tremoring or any trembling? Is there a difference between the right-hand side of your pelvis and the left? The side that you've been focusing on versus the side that you haven't? Does one feel heavier, the other one lighter? Does one feel more contracted? Does one feel more relaxed? And just notice, there's no right or wrong. So then switch your awareness down to your foot valve. That little bit at the very end of the arch of your foot, leaning against your heel point. Does the arch of your foot feel like it's pulling up into the foot? Or does it feel like it's resting on the floor or on the ground? Do your toes feel they're contracting or gripping? Are they relaxed? What does the outside edge of your foot feels like? Does it feel like it's pressing or it's resting. And does anything change as you hold your awareness in that area? Holding your awareness on your foot valve, moving it up to your ASIS and your shoulder girdle, and back down again from your shoulder girdle to your ASIS, to your foot valve, and comparing right and left sides. Does it feel different than when we started? Is your back body resting differently on the ground? Does one side feel heavier than the other? Then switching to the other side of your body, the one that you haven't paid attention to yet, which in my case is the right-hand side. Focusing on the acromion process, or the top of the shoulder girdle. Does the shoulder blade feel like it's pulling up towards your ears? Does it feel like it's contracting towards midline? Or does it feel like it's resting evenly on the ground? And as you hold your awareness on your shoulder blade, does anything change? Comparing your right and left shoulder blade. And just noticing if they're resting more evenly on the ground than when you were just focusing on one side. Or does one feel different than the other? Moving your awareness to your ASIS on this side. And again, noticing if it feels like your hips or your pelvic bone is pulling you towards midline. If it feels contracted, or if as you're paying attention to this area, things are starting to feel a little heavier. Which part of your pelvic floor makes contact with the ground? And as you keep your awareness in this area, does anything change? When you compare your right and your left pelvis, are they resting on the ground evenly? Does one feel higher than the other? Does one hip feel heavier and one more contracted than the other? And just notice, there's no right or wrong answer. Moving down to the foot valve, in my case on the right hand side. Feeling the outside of the foot. How is my arch of my foot resting on the ground? Circling around the foot from one side to the other, noticing if I'm graping my toes, if I'm gripping or if my foot is resting. And as I'm holding my attention at the end of the arch of my foot, at the beginning of the heel, does anything change? Is my foot resting differently on the ground than it did at the beginning of placing your awareness there? Does the right and left foot feel like they're resting equally, or does one foot feel heavier than the other? And then moving your awareness from your foot valve up to your ASIS, and from your ASIS up to your acromion, and back down again from your acromion to your ASIS and your foot valve. And notice if anything changes. Starting with the side that you were placing your awareness on in the beginning, in which case my left side, or whatever side you prefer to start focusing on. If you push your foot valve and your shin against the wall ahead of you and slightly lift your hip, your ASIS, making a very small, imperceptible, almost hard to see movement of pushing your hip up and your foot valve against the floor, your shin against the wall ahead of you. And just repeat that movement about a dozen times. Each time you contract, does your breath change? Are you holding other parts of your body as you're pushing? Are you able to move your pelvis independently, or is both sides of your pelvis moving at the same time? Are you able to completely relax your psoas muscle, which is located between the ASIS and the bottom of your pelvis? Can you feel it contracting and relaxing as you're resting your foot back down? And as you're moving Does anything change in your body? Does your shoulder blade rest differently on the ground? Does your peripheral vision change? Do you breathe differently? Switching to the right hand side, or whichever side that you have not done this movement on yet. Again, push your foot valve into the ground, your shin against the wall ahead of you, and slightly lift your hip bone in a very minute, very imperceptible movement. Pay attention to your breath. Does your right hip or left hip take the other side with it, or are you able to move your hip one side independently of the other? How is your back body resting on the ground? Can you feel your shoulder girdle resting differently than at the beginning of the session? Are you able to feel your psoas muscle, which runs between your ASIS and your pelvic floor, contracting and relaxing? Do you feel any trembling in your pelvic floor or your legs? Is your breath changing? Now comparing your right and your left side of your body. And notice if anything feels different between the right and the left side. Is one side heavier, the other one lighter? Do you feel more pressure on one side of the body than the other? Lifting both arms to the ceiling and interlacing your hands while keeping your elbows lifted. And then push your elbow. In my case, I'm going to start on the left-hand side, but whichever side was the one that you started on, to the ceiling. And see if you're able to initiate the movement from your shoulder girdle or your acromion instead of pushing from your elbow. And if this seems alien to you, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just bringing awareness to that area and taking an action to initiate a novel movement from your shoulder blade up towards the ceiling. And lifting or pushing that elbow up and releasing it back down. Is there any difference in pressure in your foot valve or in your or any movement in your ASIS when you're moving the shoulder girdle this way? Do you feel your pelvis tilting in this movement towards one side or another? Is there a different pressure in the foot when you're raising your shoulder from one side to another? Switching to the opposite side. Again, pushing your elbow towards the ceiling. Lifting and dropping your shoulder blade or your acromion. Paying attention towards your ASIS and your foot valve. And can you feel the movement of your shoulder affecting those other areas of your body? And does anything change as you're moving your body this way? And now resting both arms down by your side. And seeing if your body's feeling differently resting on the ground. Are your shoulder blades resting more evenly? Are your hip bones feeling closer towards the ground, or are they still feeling close towards midline? Are your foot valves, the arches of your feet, pulling up into the foot, or are they feeling closer to the ground? The next movement is a very, very imperceptible lifting of the knees up towards the ceiling. So in my case, starting on the left-hand side, I'm lifting my foot up and very gently lifting my knee up and placing my foot back down. So lifting my foot up with my knee and placing it back down. How much or how little you move doesn't matter. Can you feel your midline contracting? Can you feel your psoas muscle and your ASIS shifting as you are lifting your foot off the ground? Does your opposite side get pulled towards midline as you're moving? Are you holding your breath when you are lifting your knee? Lift your knee and set your foot back down again. And how does your foot rest differently on the ground when you rest it between movements? Does it feel heavier? Does your foot feel lighter or more evenly rested on the ground? Does your ASIS bone move towards the right or left? Can you feel your shoulder girdle being pushed down into the floor, or is it lifting up? And just notice. comparing right and left sides of the body and see if anything feels different. Switching to the opposite side, and again lifting the knee. Paying attention to the foot valve. And the midline contracting. Does the the opposite part of your body want to lift up as you are lifting your knee? Which parts of your body are pushing into the ground when you are lifting your knee? Is your shoulder being pushed? Can you feel your pelvic floor heavier or more contracted as you're lifting your knee? Can you feel your psoas muscle between your ASIS and your pelvic floor contracting as you're lifting your knee? Are you holding your breath as you're lifting your knee? And which part of your body are lifting more towards one side than the other? Is your ASIS pushing more towards the right or left as you're lifting your knee? And as you're setting your foot back down, is your foot resting differently on the floor than it did at the beginning of the session? Are your hip bones or your pelvic floor resting on the ground differently than they did at the beginning? And what is the sense of the back body and the shoulder blade area? Stretching out your legs now. Focusing, in my case, again, on the side that I started on, which is my left. And rolling my toes to the right and a little bit to the left. And just kind of like a windshield washer motion, move your foot to the right and left. How big a movement doesn't matter. But kind of try to take an initiation of this movement from your ASIS bone instead of from your toes. See if you can initiate this movement from the hips rather than from the foot itself. Go back and forth in the windshield wiper motion, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. Are you holding your breath as you're trying to initiate this movement from the hips? Are you trying to focus too hard on getting it right? There's no right or wrong. You're just aware and sensing. Can you feel your hip bone rotating as you're moving your foot? Can you feel movement in your shoulder blade or your acromion And when you rest your foot in that movement, does anything feel different from one side to the other? Does one side of the body feel heavier or lighter? Switching to the opposite side, and again, moving your foot and rolling your heel a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left. And does your body move from the toes, or can you initiate the movement from your hip bone, moving a little to the right, moving a little to the left? Are you holding your breath as you're trying to focus on taking an action that is different from your usual way of movement? Moving from your breath to sensing into your hip bone, rotating a little to the right or left. Does your shoulder girdle feel different when you're moving your foot this way? And then resting both sides of the foot. And just take awareness of your body overall and see if it feels any different than in the beginning of the session. Rolling to one side of your body now, in which case I'm going to move to the left-hand side, bringing your feet to 90 degrees. And whether you are resting your arm or whether you're placing it on your hip, does not matter. It's whatever is more comfortable to you. And then just move your acromion or your shoulder girdle on your right-hand side, a little bit to the right, and a little bit to the left, a little bit to the left, and then to the right. That's what I meant to say. And just kind of repeat, moving your rib cage and your shoulder girdle back and forth, a little bit to the right, and a little bit to the left. And as you're moving your ribs, can you feel your rib cage on the ground moving with the shoulder girdle? Are you able to move each side of your rib cage independently? Or are they glued together? Moving a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left. Are you holding your breath as you're moving back and forth? Are you holding tension in your legs? Are you contracting your stomach? And then give it a rest. And just kind of be aware of how your body's resting on the ground. Moving back onto your back. And switching to the opposite side, which means I have to turn so you can still see what I'm doing. Moving your foot or your knees angled 90 degrees. And again, resting your hand on the ground or on your hips, whichever is more comfortable. Moving a little bit to the right, to the left, I mean, and a little bit to the right. Are you holding tension in your legs? Are you holding your breath as you're moving your shoulders back and forth? Is your rib cage glued together? Or can you move your ribs independently from one side to the other? And there's no right or wrong, just be aware. Rolling back onto your back with your feet a little bit wider than your hips, and taking an overall inventory of your body. Does it feel any different than when you started? Slowly making your way up to sitting. Paying attention to your vision, seeing if it feels any different. Get up, walk around a few steps. How are your feet resting on the ground as you're walking around? Has your breath changed? And for a closing of this session, I'm just going to play us a little heart frequency with the bowl. Thank you for joining me on this journey of paying attention to your motor pathways of your body and connecting to your parasympathetic nervous system. And as you walk through life in the next few days, try to pay attention to the 3 points that we were working on in this practice and see if you can bring yourself to a place of awareness on where your body parts are sitting and how they're behaving, and let your sensory motor pathways update that information in the next 7 to 10 days, and enjoy being present in the moment and in a calm state of life. Thanks for joining me.